If you've ever felt like the enemy is winning, or that you're met with overwhelming pushback when sharing your faith, this video is for you. We're going to reveal the hidden victory in this passage that proves the kingdom of God is unstoppable, even when it seems like there is no hope. Let's look at the spiritual warfare showdown between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of darkness. First, we will begin by reading the passage together.
Mark chapter 5, verse 1 to 20. They came to the other side of the sea, to the region of the Gerasenes. And when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him any more, even with a chain, for he had often been restrained with shackles and chains. But the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torture me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. Now there on the hillside, a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, stampeded down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the man possessed by demons sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had had the legion, and they became frightened. Those who had seen what had happened to the man possessed by demons and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed.
This passage mentioned territorial terms such as region, country, and area 3 times. This territory was unlike the other places Jesus visited. Just by crossing the lake, Jesus stepped into a region that was not filled with people who knew him, nor were there Pharisees concerned about cleanliness or laws, but instead, the atmosphere changed to one that was eerie, unclean, and unwelcoming. Jesus had stepped into a territory where there was a heavy presence of the enemy. Since the violent storm was not able to stop Jesus from intruding into the territory, the enemy had to strategically plan out the battle against the incoming of the kingdom of God. In today's message, we will get up close to see how a battle between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of darkness unfolds. The enemy knew that Jesus is a powerful opponent like none they had ever battled against before. So it sent a strong leak, one that isolated, tormented, and dehumanized the demonized man. This legion of unclean spirits were so powerful that no chains and irons could bind the demonized man, and no one could do anything to help the man who was under such strong demonic oppression. Even so, the legion of unclean spirits could not help but fall down before Jesus because the authority of the Son of God was much greater than any authority of the enemy. At this stage of the battle, it seemed like Jesus was winning since the unclean spirits were completely at Jesus' disposal and were begging for mercy. The unclean spirits were so desperate that they even invoked the name of God in hope for mercy. But the unclean spirits were relentless and still hung on tight to their territory. Although the enemy's power is no match against Jesus, he is sneaky and manipulative. He knew that Jesus cared about the demonized man much more than 2,000 pigs, but the people cared about things of this world much more than the demonized man. So, the enemy used this fact strategically and planned carefully for Jesus to fall into their trap. When Jesus gave the unclean spirits permission to enter the pigs, Jesus won the battle in freeing the demonized man, but it seemed like Jesus lost the war in conquering the region. The townspeople were afraid when they saw the demonized man dressed and in his right mind, because this proved that the report they heard was true. The enemy used the drowning of the pigs to give the townspeople a frightening message of what would happen if they received Jesus and the kingdom of God. If they and their region were cleansed by Jesus, as the demonized man was, then they would need to let go of everything that was unclean in their lives and in the land. The enemy made the townspeople realize the cost of receiving the kingdom of God. Since they had been under the enemy's influence for a long time, they were used to holding on to the things of the world, which stopped them from truly seeing what Jesus and the kingdom of God could bring about in them. Therefore, they pleaded for Jesus to leave their region. Did Jesus win the battle but lost the war? No. The war was not over when Jesus was asked to leave the region. The seed that Jesus put into the demonized man's heart landed on good soil. This is evident from the man wanting to follow Jesus and obeying Jesus in spreading the seed of good news, not only to his family or to that region, but also to the whole Decapolis. We will see the bearing of the fruits from this one seedling later on in Mark chapter 7, when Jesus goes to Decapolis and its surrounding regions for the first time. Upon Jesus' arrival, the people were already welcoming Jesus and trusting in him, unlike when Jesus first arrived in the region of Gerasenes in this passage. This is because the seed that fell on good soil of the demonized man already multiplied many times over. While the enemy used fear to control the townspeople, Jesus victoriously expanded his kingdom through love for one man. The kingdom of God cannot be stopped by any powers, principalities, or authorities, because God will make the seed grow on good soil and produce crop 30, 60, 100 times over. Jesus did not allow the man to go with him as he got back onto the boat, but Jesus did not leave him by himself, since Jesus was already planted in his heart. With this, the man would bring the light of Jesus to anyone who had ears to hear the word in that region. The kingdom of God has come near, and the evil schemes of the enemy will not be able to stand against it. There was no comparison in power, as the unclean spirits could only beg for mercy before the Son of God. But behind its apparent surrender, the enemy was actually scheming to use the fear of the townspeople to push Jesus off their territory, and their scheme worked. Just when we thought Jesus had won the battle but lost the war, we are reminded of the seed parables Jesus taught regarding the kingdom of God right before crossing the Lake of Galilee. The word of the good news of Jesus landed on good soil of the demonized man's heart, and it would grow many times over in the enemy's territory. The war between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of darkness is very real, and we're engaging in battle every day as we try to bring the light into the darkness. Although Jesus has already assured our victory on the cross, Satan will not sit back and surrender. He will pull out all his lies, tricks, and schemes against Jesus' followers. But from this passage, we know that Jesus, who is much more powerful, is always with us. Therefore, we do not need to fear. And although on the outside, it might sometimes seem like the kingdom of God is losing the war, but from the demonized man, we can see that even one seed on good soil can make such a great difference. So we know that the seed in our own hearts will grow and bear fruits many times over, and one day the effects of the seed will become so great that the whole world will not only see the kingdom of God, but also come to it as their refuge. It's easy to look at our world and feel like we cannot fight the legion of darkness. But as we saw today, Jesus doesn't need a massive army to flip a territory. He only needs a heart of good soil to make his kingdom grow many times over. If this study shifts your perspective on how the kingdom of God actually expands, make sure to hit that subscribe button to continue learning about the reality of the kingdom of God. This is exactly what we will be learning about in our next video, where we look at Jairus, his daughter, and the woman subject to bleeding. This is part 11 of our 40-part deep dive into the Gospel of Mark. Each of these teachings is a puzzle piece, filling in the bigger picture of the good news. If you're just joining us, I highly recommend going to the beginning of the playlist and watching from part 1 so you don't miss the foundational concept we've already laid down. I'll see you in part 12. Emmanuel, and God bless.